Hey everybody, welcome to the Mike and JD Show YouTube channel. Thank you for being here. I want you to do me a big favor before you check out this clip. I want you to hit the like button. I want you to throw in a comment and make sure you're a subscriber to this channel. And then I want you to share this video with your friends. Help us defeat the algorithm. And then if you like this content and you appreciate this content, please head over to patreon.com/ the Mike and JD Show and support the show. That is how we actually get funded to be able to do this. So we thank you very much for being here. And now enjoy the clip.
Competition starting to get thick. It's the click, so I hope you watch your A game. Ain't made no way.
And that's going to get us to our one of the topics we want to talk to you about, Garrett, because I think Garrett has good insight onto on society and culture and things like that. He's really got his finger on the pulse of what's really going on, not just in sports but in like community and things like that. And MJF and Juice this week got themselves into a little bit of controversy. Juice Robinson. So MJF's promo about the anti-Semitism he faced as a kid and being having rolls of quarters thrown at him and things like that, essentially is a hate crime, right? I mean, that's not really something to play with. Well, they brought that up in an angle this week with Juice Robinson, where Juice had a roll of quarters with the name Friedman, not MJF. He went Friedman on there to basically spell out that last name, so that way we know that this guy is Jewish. So they were leaning into an anti-Semitism angle. There's no two ways about it. And they even spoke about it on commentary. And they took a lot of heat for it, and probably rightfully so, right? They took a lot of heat for it online. MJF has since come out saying, "Guys, it's all fake. This is just my story." Which now if it was already dead at that point, it's probably even more dead now, because now nobody cares anymore. So what do you think about it, Garrett?
I think this is like the hardest. Now, when we talk about pro wrestling, it's usually pretty easy, right? You got some matches. You can complain about booking. You complain about stars. We're all experts on ratings and all what that means. This is so different. And I have been thinking about this since you asked me to come on here and going like, okay, like we all have to be thoughtful when we're talking about this, for one.
Yes.
This is not a necessarily a like a joke kind of angle or anything. This is very serious. And I have been pretty vocal going back to the NXT 2.0 era. For one, it was terrible. So I was trying to find a way to not watch that show anyways. But they had stereotyped some Asian characters pretty hard, like almost to the point of where I was like, they used to do this in wrestling a lot when I was a kid. And now as an adult, I'm seeing it again. And I have a choice now. Like, I'm not this kid who's like, I can't wait to watch wrestling every weekend. Like, I mean, I still enjoy it, but I have a choice to turn the television off. And so I stopped watching NXT for, I don't know, a long while, 5 or 6 months. And I'm back watching it now. Sometimes I may watch the clipped version, but there was a reason why I stopped watching, and it was because of these overly stereotypical Asian characters. And so I relate back to that moment, and I cannot empathize completely with someone who is Jewish in this situation. But I can sort of look back on that and go, okay, like that turned me off. Now, I think the main reason why it turned me off was just because of how poor it was and how bad it was. Now, in this scenario, it's a little bit different. In MJF is the protagonist or the hero or whatever you want to call it. I have to be careful with those terms around JD because he's gonna.
You're gonna get some. Yeah. You're gonna get some literary terms at some point in this conversation. Trust me.
He'll go Mr. Oliva on you.
So this is step one, or maybe when he started to bring the story up again, maybe that was step one, but we kind of knew that wasn't the last time he was going to bring it up.
Yeah.
So it's still very early, and it looks like the idea is that MJF, this is like a baby. This is the vehicle to fully turn MJF babyface, and he is fighting against anti-Semitism. The question that I have is, why would Juice Robinson want to be involved in this? Because it is wrestling, it is fake. We understand that he is playing a character, but he is synonymous with Juice Robinson. I don't even remember what his real name is. Like, that is who he is. And so I thought that was interesting that he was okay with this, especially Mike, you mentioned doing the whole piece about his full last name. He didn't just call him MJF, he called him his full last name. And so that was an interesting part of it. And I think where I finally just where my final thoughts went was when I watched it, I was very uncomfortable. And I wasn't necessarily uncomfortable for myself because, again, I can't fully empathize being Jewish. I was uncomfortable because I remembered what people said when he first brought that line up. And we all at some point thought, is Adam Cole going to hit this dude with quarters? Because that's really terrible if he does. That's a terrible way for a heel turn in 2023. And so that's kind of where I sat with was I took what they said and that kind of helped create what I thought about this thing. Now, you bring up the situation going on in the world. And again, being unable to fully empathize. Now, we can all sympathize with terrorism and all of the deaths and such. The timing is really awful.
Yeah.
And kind of what I hold accountable here is this Tuesday Night War, which is created, which just kind of went haywire. And I hearken back to some of the worst decision making that Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff made was during the wrestling war when they were just simply trying to one up each other. And I really wonder if we didn't have this head-to-head battle, would they have pulled the trigger on this angle? Because this angle, it feels like, was set up specifically to kind of win the conversation of the night of the Tuesday Night War. And I wish that there was some sort of hesitation to do that, especially with the news of what's going on in the world. But because of the war, the wrestling war historically, sometimes you just throw judgment out the window. Like the thing that I thought about immediately was Austin and Pillman, the gun angle. Like that was completely a wrestling war thing. WCW keeps kicking our butt. How do we kind of get the zeitgeist? How do we get it back? How are we the show that's talked about every night to beat this NWO thing? And so I wish that somebody would have told Tony Khan to not do this, especially at this time. But this guy's in a wrestling war, and I don't know for sure, but I just wonder if that's the reason ultimately that won out. But then Mike, you mentioned, and I'll end, and you guys can chat. MJF came out on Twitter and was basically like, here's why I'm doing this. This is what I really feel. I'm not going to hide behind this. And a lot of people are saying, well, why isn't Tony Khan getting ahead of the bad publicity? Now, I don't really see a lot of the bad publicity. I think TMZ had a story. Awful Announcing has been covering it, and they've actually been really fair pieces, I thought, for not a wrestling site. But
I read his story and I thought it was pretty good, the Awful Announcing one.
So maybe Tony feels like, well, it's not really, I'm not getting hit from all the sides that maybe I would consider it to be something in bad taste. And plus Max is out there. It's Max's thing. And maybe that's the thought behind why they're doing it this way. I don't know, but ultimately I wish that they wouldn't have done it. But I can't then also say, well, because I'm not Jewish, I'm a lot of friends and folks who are close to that community. They have completely different thoughts on it too. Some are like, it's fine. And others are like, this is the worst thing possible. So, I'm kind of leaning towards them and trying to learn more about, what they think. But ultimately I was pretty uncomfortable. And I thought maybe not only did I not really want to see it, I also just thought it was such bad timing and that he could have at least pushed it a little while.
It's funny you talk about timing, because last week MJF cut what I think we can all agree is the worst promo of his career. Like, he was struggling to get an audience reaction. The tofu thing with Jay White isn't working, and his work, especially his babyface work, has been subpar for the last little bit. And Suit Williams for this website wrote a dissertation, a really good piece on what's wrong with the MJF character that I know for a fact that Maxwell Jacob Friedman, the person, read. And I think he was super motivated to go out and cut a hell of a babyface promo and prove people wrong, so to say. And to be frank, in a vacuum, I think it's the best babyface promo he's cut. Maybe the best promo he's ever cut.
It was amazing.
Frankly,
It was great.
fantastic. This is clearly his idea. I saw a lot of people getting worked up. I saw some like, how could they do this to Max? And it's like, come on, dude. Like, this is a work, man. Like, who do you think is in control of all this stuff? The timing isn't great, but I think that Max Friedman, the person, saw this as a chance to do something. And he's steering like, look, wrestling has done a bad job addressing this stuff in the past. I'm not going to do that. And I think in his heart of hearts, he truly believes that he has a different take on this. And, we've had, Garrett, you and I have had discussions about what heels should and shouldn't do. And I tend to always lean in the favor of the creative, right? Because I think that sometimes art should be uncomfortable, right? Sometimes, like Joe Lanza on our network said that sometimes you're watching Max go through therapy when he's cutting promos, and it's 100% accurate.
Yep.
But I think that's a lot of creatives. Like, I look back, my favorite writer, Stephen King, right? I reread The Shining and I read Dr. Sleep, and those books are about alcoholism. The Shining is a book about an alcoholic who has no control and his only way out is death. And Dr. Sleep is about an alcoholic in recovery, and there's sequel stories. Right. And that's Stephen King working through his demons. Right. And I think that's what a lot of the great creators do. And I think for MJF, that is a life defining moment. And he definitely is working through. I think a lot of what you see with this guy is legit. Right. I think a lot of the way he talks about how he feels is real. And he is working through fiction to fix himself, which again, that is what every writer who's any good does. Now, the argument is pro wrestling the vehicle to do that? I don't have the answer to that question. That is your mileage may vary as a viewer kind of thing, right? Because there is no answer. But I'm of the mind that I would rather lean in the creator. If you have an idea, and you are sold on it, I'll say, okay. Right. Because for every Shining and Dr. Sleep, you get the Langoliers sometimes, or the Tommy Knockers. Those are shitty Stephen King books for you guys who don't know that. Like, so I will support him in his effort, and I'll say, all right, I'm going to support him in his effort. And if you make people uncomfortable with art sometimes, I think that's a good thing. But I reserve the right to say, boy, did you strike out here?
Yeah. Because ultimately the audience is going to determine whether or not it worked, right? And sometimes we typically as podcasters and as kind of like wrestling reviewers will say, oh, well, that's just a heel trying to get heat, so then you're mad at him, so it worked. Well, not always, right? Sometimes you're so mad that you don't want to watch the show anymore, like Garrett just talked about, right? And I think he could be entering into that territory a little bit with this angle. I don't know that for a fact. I think that we'll find out eventually. I would say, yes, Max, you want to do this angle. It's an anti-Semitism angle in 2023. Maybe not the best idea to do it, especially in a wrestling platform. We're not a movie. We're not a TV show, although we are scripted entertainment, but I don't think our audience is more nuanced enough to do that. And in fact, you saw the backlash online whenever he did it. And also if Chavo Guerrero Sr. today came to me and said he wanted to do an angle that he used to do with Roddy Piper in LA back in 1978, I'd tell him probably no. Or if you want to do that same angle with Terry Funk that he did in 1978, I would tell him no, that's probably not going to work today, right? Or I was there live for a Brock Lesnar promo on Eddie Guerrero, and it was one of the more racist promos I've ever seen in Fresno. It got a ton of heat there in Fresno because Fresno is a very Hispanic community. I would tell them today probably not. We're in a different world. You gotta get with the times. Now it could work, and I could be completely wrong. I just don't think it's going to work. I didn't think Juice executed very well, and I don't know why Juice would be in the promo anyway. He's the heat's with Jay
because Juice Robinson has hit people with rolls of quarters for a long time. That's why Max steered into that, because he could always lean back at it. Yeah, but Max,
he didn't write anybody's names on it.
But this is they're working on this together though.
I know,
Max can always go, oh, Juice has done this before.
Yeah,
this is part of his character.
Okay, but can we go back to why Juice wants to put himself?
That's on Juice. I have no idea.
I got a good reason for you, Garrett, and it's Juice doesn't have
be a main
social
eventer.
Media.
Oh,
he doesn't have social media. He's there doing a job. He gets paid well. He didn't give a
his
fuck.
wife has a lot of social media though.
His wife does, and it is pretty commonly known that that they're married. But he himself he doesn't really pay attention to the criticism because he doesn't have the social media. He does not care.
And
And they asked him to do something and he did it, you know?
and he also wrestles for the most part. His most success is in Japan, and you know there may be different thinking and thought process there. So you know what's the reason why I mentioned the juice thing, and I'm going to take this into like a pop culture reference that I will pop a couple people, but that's it. But in Beverly Hills 90210, there was a character.
Of course,
I knew this was coming eventually.
There was a character.
Andrea.
No. So Donna Martin, obviously Aaron Spelling's daughter, she is in an abusive relationship. And the guy who plays the abuser is Jamie Walters. He is also a singer. He had a couple pop songs out there. With the Heights.
How do you talk to an angel? I remember that.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's all I got.
So he pushes her down the stairs, eventually goes and gets help, and they kind of bring him back in as like he's so sorry and got help and he's a good person. And his acting career was essentially over. He became a fireman and did good things with his life, but he said that character, even though it wasn't real, he got so much heat in the real world for portraying this character that it kind of ended his acting career. And so I don't think that's going to happen with Juice. I think, you know, wrestling is much different. I think the fans are much different as well. And obviously this is not Beverly Hills 90210, which is doing 20 million, you know, a Wednesday night, but it is an interesting thing for a character. Now, maybe it's a way for him to be in the main event angle. Like maybe that's kind of the positive to it. But that was the thing that I thought was like, I just don't understand why he would want to be this poor human in this role. I get why Max would want to be, because, you know, look, we can go back only last year. Kanye West said something that was really offensive and anti-Semitic. Kyrie Irving, the basketball player, he did the same thing. He was sharing videos on Instagram that were anti-Semitic. So that part of it is still very much a big deal in the world. So I understand, and kind of back to, you know, what JD was saying, why Max would want to do this, because the anti-Semitism is out there, and it's constantly out there, and so I very much understand that part of it. Now, can they tell this story in the right way in professional wrestling? I think that's a different question.
Yeah, and I think that pro wrestling has done a poor job in the past of telling these types of stories. Now, Max is a next level performer than most people. Juice is a good performer, but Max is next level. Maybe they can pull it off. I get the feeling they're going to pull the plug on the whole deal, though. That's just my prediction.
You
think they're going to go with it?
No, he's doing anti-bullying campaigns based on this. Like, Max has a lot invested in this story. I don't think it's going anywhere. It might get wrapped up pretty quick, but I don't think it's going anywhere.
Okay.
In the case of Jamie Walters' his career, I think the big problem with him is he wasn't very good.
Well, he's a one note guy, but he was also kind of a heartthrobby guy before that turn in his character, and then he wasn't a heartthrobby guy anymore. He was very hated very quickly.
Well, because there are actors that have played like serial killers, rapists, Nazis, like Edward Norton. Was a Nazi in American History X that turned babyface in the same movie. His career turned out fine. You know what I mean? So
Jack Nicholson has done nothing but play sociopaths his entire career.
I had an interesting example, and I'm very interested because JD's a movie guy, obviously, and Mike, you know your stuff. I specifically decided that I was not going to watch Oppenheimer. And I knew that it was going to be a really good movie, and I knew that I would probably enjoy it. But I couldn't go in there thinking I'm going to watch a movie where the end goal is to kill Japanese people. I am Japanese American.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people probably think, it reminds me of too many things that I had to learn in school, right? It just reminds me of this thing that exists. Every time they talked about internment camps, I have family who was in internment camps. I have, my mom was very bullied in school because she was Japanese American. So I I decided I'm just not going to watch this movie. And for people who want to watch it, more power to you. I don't care. It's just personally for me, I don't want to deal with it. But in the movie, I knew what it was about. I saw the trailers and I could make that choice. Somebody watching AEW on Tuesday night because of this hullabaloo about the Tuesday Night War, they were not able to have that choice when it started. So that is a little that is the difference, because people have talked to me about the same thing. Why is movies and wrestling a different example? You didn't see that coming. They did not preview AEW Dynamite that you were going to see this angle. So it is a little bit different.
Yeah, but you knew Oppenheimer was coming out, right? Like, I mean, like you heard about the movie. So,
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
he's
you
making the
got-
choice not to watch it. But
the-
when you're
but, like,
watching Dynamite, you don't know the anti-Semitism's coming.
No, but like that's the hint that it's coming, right? It's just because
Yeah.
really we got the trailer. This angle is the trailer for what comes. So you can make the choice not to watch the match. Right?
You can make the choice that when MJF shows up, you can just fast forward or you can turn it off. But if I was
did, it turns out,
if I was running the company, my fear would be, did that angle make more fans than would churn? And I don't know what the answer is. We don't have any data on that yet, obviously.
Yeah.
But that would be the fear, right? Is that you turned off people who were fans and they may shut the show off for a few weeks. And I don't know if you will then make that up by fans that you may have made who are like, oh, this thing is interesting. But I could be wrong. There might be people who watch that show and were like, I'm very interested in where they go with this. And they may tune in from here.
They may. Most of the outrage has been through Twitter, and Twitter is not real life. It really isn't. I can tell you, Mike's opinion is don't do it. Don't go there. I don't think that you're skilled enough to pull that off. Save it for movies, right? Let movies and TV shows handle it. Pro wrestling can be sports entertainment. I don't think they need to go in that direction. I think it turns off more people than it's going to turn on. But I could be dead wrong. Maybe it generates heat and they sell some tickets off of this. But guys, we are up against the clock here, so I want to just get real quick. I want to get Garrett's and JD's thoughts on the NXT versus AEW war of Tuesday, and then we're going to do bad tweets. Okay, so Garrett, what are your thoughts on AEW getting their asses handed to them by NXT?
I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of what I'm going to talk to John LaRocca about on the Fight Game podcast, which is, I thought for all the hullabaloo, the second time I used that word, and I don't think I've ever used that word in my life. I thought both
1930s.
Both companies put a very good foot forward. And I thought both shows were good if you like those shows. But I don't think that an NXT fan who only watches WWE turn the channel or whatever, however you do it these days, and said, you know what, this AEW, I like it. And likewise, I don't think hardcore AEW fans who don't like anything WWE related flipped over to see, John Cena pandering to the NXT crowd and were like, you know what, I need to watch more of this. It was a race for a rating that it's meaningful for 1 week, and I don't think that you built any fans at all. I don't think either show built fans based on what they did. So, I mean, I think we're just back to zero come next week, and everything's going to be the same.
Oh, 100%. I completely forgot this happened last year, right? I literally had zero memory that this happened last year. And like WWE finally said, let's just really try to beat them for once. Like, let's actually just like put effort into trying to beat them.
The problem is that they did get beat last year, and I'm sure they circled this date and were like, we're not getting beat this time, not on our own night. There's no way. And they went out and pulled out all the stops.
Well, and here's what's crazy about it is, like, for all talk of like NXT crushed AEW, AEW had the exact same 18 to 49 rating they had last year.
Yeah.
All the growth was in NXT because they got their fans. They finally motivated their fans to watch the program. And NXT's ratings have grown over the year, right? So they've done a good job building NXT.
Thanks to the actor strike, you were able to get John Cena on NXT. Who knew?
And my thoughts on
it, a lot more too, based on how things broke down this week.
We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely.
We hostile, a hymn, I clear my throat and preach the gospel. My flow is doper than ever, nice when we separate, but together there's a murderous